The passing of Raymond Federman, whom many of you know and have read, and many of you have known for many years, approximating a lifetime, I think, for some of us. This is in memory of Ray. As Federman used to say when I was his student in the mid-'80s, that each of his books began with a sentence he heard in his head. Here is a sentence for Federman, who last week, as he would also say, changed tense. A death sentence, if you will, for Raymond, who was himself both fact and fiction, so that it was difficult to tell which was which, as he was French, but also American, had been a U.S. citizen from before I was born, had fought in the Korean War and jumped out of airplanes in an American Army uniform, and yet whose accent sounded so FOB that that you didn't at first take note of the dissonance it created with his superb facility with the English language, and who himself would downplay that facility because, as he once told me, he was not interested in belles-lettres, but instead, Pelton, he would say, I want to write lettres de merde, adding the translation immediately afterward, I want to write shit letters, Pelton. And now I cannot even think of him speaking to me in those days without hearing in my head him calling me not Ted, but then always Pelton, thickly French accented so that it rhymes with Beltone, and which I'm not sure he even did all that often. It was a long time ago, and this was always one of the points of Raymond's writing, that there's no getting back to what actually happened because we confuse it with our stories, and our stories become layers of sediment over the originary moment, which, when we look for it, isn't there, or is underneath, or have changed contour, or is not really of interest anyway, because of what has come later, what has replaced it, what has become the memory stand-in, the usurper, that which, if you didn't know better, you would swear was the memory, a process I was already aware of in Ray's work, but which was revealed to me just this past year as even more radically at issue than I had supposed when I was speaking to his daughter Simone. And I recalled in passing the closet episode, the originary moment of the creation of the Federman we all know, when he was cut off from all that he was theretofore and entrapped like a bug in amber in history and accident when the French police in league with the Gestapo came up the stairs to his family's apartment and his mother said, shh, and pushed him into the closet, and the rest of the family was deported to Auschwitz. And Simone said, yeah, if that's what really happened. Because with Federman, one finally can never be completely sure. Everything is up for grabs, even as his work grounded itself in that which was so horribly, unspeakably factual, 6 million times factual, 9 million times factual, so factual that to deny its facticity is a criminal offense in many parts of the world, but that even so, finally, like all else, became words, changed tense, as Raymond himself now has, kept from doing so for 67 years by the actions of his mother in his story, the mother to whom he dedicates the final words of his final book in English that the press I direct, Start Your Own Books, will publish in the next few months. This book is for my mother. Federman, yes, what? Nothing. So that, of course, it is unsatisfying to call this just a story. Of course, that which relates to life and death, or to the saving of a life, or to a new birth, or to a first birth. Of course, this is not merely story, or rather, mere and story should not be linked together. And of course, accidents happen, because mere in French is mother, mère. Of course, we should not make light, we should not pun. And of course, this is what The Voice in the Closet is also all about, the travesty of taking experience and making it into story. And I quote, no, I cannot resign myself to being the inventory of his miscalculations. I am not ready for his summation, nor do I wish to participate any longer willy-nilly in the fiasco of his fabrication, failed account of my survival, abandoned in the dark with nothing but my own excrement to play with, now neatly packaged on the roof to become the symbol of my origin in the word shit of his fabulation, unquote. Of course, there is the real, and of course, the story cheats it of its power, falsifying it in representing it, misrepresents it, of course. But you can still tell this story, Raymond, they would tell him. It's a great story of war and its aftermath, of loss and individual courage and carrying on, of coming to the land of opportunity. Why do you insist on messing it up with all that trivia? Of course it's interesting, theoretically, they would tell him, but what our readers really want is the story. So why don't you just get rid of all that stuff about the noodles and the apartment and the door trying to get open? And the trivia and the toothpaste and your car and masturbation. And of course, it can't really be told, they would tell him, but that's the business of writing. It's entertainment. We all know that. Of course, what happened to your family is terrible, awful beyond words. People want to hear that story, and they want to hear about the young man who came to America and became a success. That's the best kind of story. Tell that, they will tell him. You will make a lot of money. And Federman said, and those of us who love him for this. You know, Ted, he was calling me Ted by this time. We'd become friends. It was many years later. You know, Ted, I went home and I locked myself in a room and I spent 2 years demolishing that novel. I wrecked it. I took their notion of coherence and dismantled it. I threw words and letters all over the page. I dismembered that novel. I destroyed it. I massacred it. I decapitated it. And it became words and fragments of words and pictures and designs made out of letters on the page. And I never made a penny because it became words and letters and incoherence. And I would not tell their story because I told the only stories I could tell. And there is no distinction between memory and imagination. I would not falsify because I would not lie. Because when I walk down the street, my sisters might turn the corner ahead of me and meet me there. And I have to believe that. And how could I tell them when I saw them that I had lied, that I had taken the money, that I had sold them for coin, that I had pissed on their memory, that I had not insisted on the truth in my fictions?